Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, join me, Rob McConnell, as together we'll investigate the world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology here on the X-Zone Radio TV show on XZBN and the X-Zone TV channel on Simul TV. Since 1990, the X-Zone Radio TV show has been the place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Together, we'll investigate UFOs, aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, psychic phenomenon, lake monsters, conspiracy theories, government cover-ups, the truth embargo, alien abductions, ESP, haunted locations from around the world, and so much more. With over 28 years of broadcasting and more than 4,500 individual guests, the X-Zone is truly a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality, as evidenced by the credibility, integrity, and professionalism of the guests that we bring to our international audience. If you have seen a UFO, had a close encounter, seen a ghost, Bigfoot, lake monster, or a story that you would like to share or have investigated, contact me, Rob McConnell, by sending me your email to xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, or you can call toll-free 1-800-610-7035, extension 143, and on Skype, X-Zone Radio TV. For more information on the X-Zone Radio TV show with yours truly, Rob McConnell, visit www.xzoneradiotv.com or www.xzonetvchannel.com or simultv.com and xzbn.net. Until next we meet here in the X-Zone from our broadcast center and studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, always remember, X-Zone Nation, keep your eyes to the sky and your heart in the light.
This is A Different Perspective with Kevin Randle. A retired U.S. Lieutenant Colonel, Kevin Randle has been studying UFOs for nearly 50 years. Kevin has investigated some of the most famous UFO cases in the world and has been consulted for dozens of documentaries about UFOs. Considered one of the leading experts into the Roswell UFO crash of 1947, Kevin has written more than 25 books about UFOs, including the recently published Roswell in the 21st Century. Now, here's the host of A Different Perspective, Kevin Randle.
As I promised last week, I would return, and here I am. This is A Different Perspective, and I am truly Kevin Randle. Before we bring on Larry Holcombe, who is my guest tonight, I'll have a couple of things to talk about. As you've heard, Rob McConnell has initiated the International UFO Reporting Research Center, the IUFORRC, just a couple of days ago. You can find the website at www.iuforrc.com. And for those of you who've had a sighting, there's a form there that you can fill out. I'll be serving as the lead investigator with an idea to investigate UFO sightings with an eye to gathering the proper information for a database. The one thing that we have to point out here, and there's an awful lot of sightings that come across the transom where it's obviously Venus, it's obviously some kind of a mundane explanation, and we'll look at those sightings, but we're going to not pay a lot of attention to them because they're not really UFOs, they're not really flying saucers, they are that sort of thing, they are Venus. And it is incredible the number of people who mistake Venus for some kind of a flying saucer. I remember a case not long ago where people told me they'd seen this thing hovering near the horizon and it was shooting spotlights down into a pasture, maybe some kind of a cattle mutilation thing or not. But what they were looking at was Venus, and it was tricks of the atmosphere and tricks of their eyes and the brightness of Venus that kind of fooled them. And one of the giveaways was, well, we didn't really see it leave. It just sort of faded away after the sun went down, and that's a real clue for Venus. So we'll be taking a look at that, those sorts of things. And for those of you who are interested, please take a look at my book, Encounters in the Desert, which is about the Socorro UFO landing with Lonnie Zamora, and of course Roswell in the 21st century. And now, for those of you who've waited patiently, I'll bring on Larry Holcombe, who for over 50 years has studied the fascinating subject of UFOs. And after taking early retirement, he became seriously involved in researching what he likes to refer to as the flying saucer phenomenon. He uses the term flying saucer because he finds UFOs all-inclusive. And I always found UFOs, as he said, all-inclusive, but flying saucers dealt with spacecraft. You're not talking about something that's unidentified, you're talking about something specific. So flying saucers really is kind of the better term, even though it had become pretty much a pejorative in the last 50 years. To be more precise, it is generally accepted that 95% of all UFO sightings are something prosaic, mundane, whatever, and the remaining 5% cannot be explained. The problem with this is in the statistics. If these statistics are presented to the casual observer, the natural thought would be, if more research is done, the remaining 5% could be explained as well. And that's, of course, a false understanding. 95% becomes 100% of prosaic sightings, and the other 5% are the true UFOs, the true flying saucers. Of course, flying saucers come in all shapes and sizes, not just saucer-shaped. However, for clarity, flying saucer works well for Larry, works well for me. His book is The Presidents in UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. Welcome to A Different Perspective, Larry Holcombe.
Delighted to be here, Kevin, and I think your explanation of UFOs and flying saucers is spot on. It's and also the mention of the planet Venus is something that drives me crazy. Why people can't see that they're looking at a planet. It can be rather amazing at certain times of the year. Really sticks out, but it's obvious what it is.
Well, the problem with Venus goes back into the 19th century, and if you've read Evan McConnell's book on the Son of Morningstar, there's a point in there where Custer and the 7th Cavalry are on the Washita, and they're about to attack the Cheyenne village for really no reason whatsoever. But they see this light in the sky, and they think it's some kind of signal the Indians have put up, some kind of flaming arrow or something, and what they're looking at is Venus, of course. So, that problem goes back forever. There was a sighting during the Great Airship of 1897 where the people in Omaha were talking about the airship coming in and had a bright headlight on it, and I'm convinced what they were looking at was Venus as well. So there we are. Venus is the culprit here.
Yeah.
The book is The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. I was wondering what inspired you to write the book.
Well, a good question. I guess the real simple answer is UFOs Past, Present, and Future, the documentary that was written and co-produced by Robert Emenegger. When I saw the documentary for the first time, I was startled. It is unique in that it goes into the subject of UFOs without any counter conversation. It obviously had the backing of the government. You just don't walk into the Pentagon with cameras and what have you and start filming without government approval. Rod Serling did a tremendous job. I thought it was an excellent documentary, and I couldn't get it off my mind. Consequently, I, through the help of, I guess it was Antonio Huneeus.
Antonio Huneeus.
Yes. I think he sort of disappeared from the field, but in any case, he knew Bob Emenegger. He contacted Bob, told him, I sent Antonio an email, and he forwarded it on to Bob Emenegger, and shortly thereafter, I got a call from Bob. We talked for probably 2 hours, and I was fascinated with his story, the whole background of the thing. So we started corresponding back and forth. He sent me a lot of documents and of various things, and we became friends. My wife and I ended up going to, my wife and I ended up going to his home in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We spent the night in his guest cottage, took him to dinner, had really a good conversation with him the next day, and before we left. And I just, the idea for the book came about. You know, when I talked to the people at Roswell that were at the festival when I was, I guess, the first year I attended, they all gave Bob thumbs up, and Don Schmidt for one, and a number of people said that he was a straight shooter. So the idea of the book formed. I contacted several literary agents in New York. One got back to me and said, "I really like what you've got here." But,
well, let's cut to the chase here.
Yeah.
You say it's a secret history from FDR. What did FDR know about UFOs or flying saucers?
Well, we only have evidence that is questionable. We have letters between General George Marshall and FDR, letters from FDR back to Marshall, all concerning the subject. And I know that one of the letters said that when we were victorious, because the war was going on then, obviously.
So you're talking about Foo Fighters at this point?
Well, you know, you had there's the Reverend Huffman, I believe, that case in 1941, where Baptist minister, and he was called to a plane crash in Cape Girardeau. This was according to his granddaughter. And
yes, but that's a single witness case, and it's basically a hearsay evidence. And I'm trying to get us back to FDR here.
Yeah.
And the discussion there. But before we go any further, we're going to have to take a break here.
Okay.
Which comes up way too often, I think. Really, it doesn't. Rob, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. The book is The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. The website is Larry Holcombe with an E on the end of the Holcombe.com. You can take a look at that. Mine, of course, my blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, and we have discussions about all sorts of things when we get done with the program here. So you want some more information or some places to look, there's often some hints of where you can find additional information about these sorts of things we're talking about. We will be back right after this, so please stick around.
It's hard to listen to the news without realizing we're living in volatile, unprecedented times. Yet never has there been such an opportunity to transform the human condition. As old structures fail, where can we find the guidance to co-create a better way? Find Your Path Home is an ever-evolving, leading-edge information, education, and healing resource center designed to support and guide you on your path to unity and enlightenment. Based on sound principles employed by shamans worldwide, we provide techniques that can support you through the current transitions. offering online shamanic classes, international long-distance shamanic healing sessions, complimentary Mission Evolution radio episodes and Stairway to Heaven TV vignettes, seminars, retreats, and much more. All of this can be found on findyourpathhome.com.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me. simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
As promised, I am back with Larry Holcombe, the author of The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. When we took the break, we were talking about the Cape Girardeau UFO crash from 1941, and I was saying that I had a bit of a problem with it simply because not only is it basically single witness, it's a secondhand witness as well. So there's not a lot of good information there. Could be great and authentic, but the lack of good corroborative information, I think, is a negative on that one. But I guess my question, Larry, is it would seem to me that FDR, given the timing of the documents you talk about during World War II, his interest would be in the Foo Fighters that were plaguing our air operations on a global scale. So is that kind of where FDR was, or is there something I'm missing?
I don't recall anything that I've in my research where he directly talked about Foo Fighters. The problem is the information that I've got on FDR comes from what I consider to be a questionable source. Well, let me back up. The source I've gotten most of this information from is Dr. Bob Wood and the documents that he has on FDR and General Marshall, and these include the Battle of Los Angeles, but you can't say for sure that these documents are not bogus. In fact, if they came from who I think they came from.
Would that be Tim Cooper?
Tim Cooper, yeah. I think that anything that Tim Cooper was involved with is very questionable.
I would think that if Tim Cooper called me on the phone and said the sky was blue, I'd go out and look before I believed him.
Well,
but I don't want to say anything disparaging about him.
Anyway, I think that I'm surprised that some of these documents have such a high level of authenticity from Bob Wood. That really surprises me.
Well, that kind of takes us in a different direction, and I'm going to go there. But Dr. Wood is a firm believer of MJ-12, and he accepts a great number of documents about MJ-12 as being authentic, including some of those that came from Cooper.
Yeah.
So, and I think his personal bias kind of colors his thinking on some of that. But so I guess the question that I didn't want to get to right now, but is do you accept that some of the MJ-12 documents are authentic?
I believe yes, I do. I think that let me put it this way, Kevin. I think that something like MJ-12 existed and probably still does. Now,
but that's really a separate point.
Yeah.
The question is the MJ-12 documents. Do you think those documents, all of them are, or some of them? I shouldn't say all of them. Do you think some of them are authentic?
I think several of them are authentic.
And which ones would that be?
I think that the SOM, what is it, SOM 1-1, the Special Operations Manual. The only reason that I tend to believe that is the printer that at the printed government documents looked at it, and because the raised Z, which you know what that is.
Yes.
I think that adds some weight to that being authentic.
But there are other problems with it, anachronisms that shouldn't exist, like suggesting that. Well, let me take a step back for the audience. The raised Z's in the printing of that document, the Z's that appeared on some of the lines were slightly raised above the lines, and that seems to be something that happened in a lot of authentic documents that we know are government documents. So that would be a point toward its authenticity.
Right.
But there are anachronisms in the document. The use of suggesting satellites. A crashed satellite is a good cover for a crashed UFO sort of thing. In 1954, when this manual was supposedly printed, there were no satellites to crash.
No, there weren't, but I think we had the capability of launching them. The reason we didn't is because the Eisenhower administration would not let them go ahead and do it because of the U-2 incident, and he thought it would inflame the Russians.
Wait, the U-2 incident? That took place in 1960.
Wait a minute. I'm getting my story. I'm getting my stories confused here. I'm trying to think. What was it? No, it wasn't the U-2. It couldn't have been the U-2 incident.
No, it couldn't have been, because U-2 was May of 1960, and Eisenhower went in front of the UN or in public arenas and said, we're not flying aircraft over the Soviet Union. Yeah. And then, of course, the Soviets trotted out Gary Powers, and he said, whoops.
I really need to go back and check. I can't remember, but it was definitely something that we had problems we had with the Russians, that Eisenhower would not let them proceed with a satellite program because he felt that the Russians would think that the satellite was a spy satellite, which is exactly what it was, would have been. When they put up Sputnik, Eisenhower was delighted because we could go ahead with our satellite program. But I guess what I'm saying, the satellite program was delayed. So there is, we had been working on satellites. I mean, it was well known.
But the problem I have with that is, if there was a crash and the explanation was it was a satellite that we had put up, wouldn't that have caused as much trouble with the Soviets as the actual satellite being launched? I mean, suddenly someone said, well, they're talking about a satellite retrieval. What have they put up that we don't know about? It would seem to me that would cause as much trouble as an actual launch.
Well, if we had a satellite up, then the Russians would have been extremely suspicious of it. And boy, I wish I could go back and remember what triggered all this with Eisenhower. Why Eisenhower will not let the intelligence agencies move ahead.
Well, let's move away from the manual, since we've hit an impasse here.
Yeah. What
about the Eisenhower briefing document? Do you think that's authentic?
I think that is authentic, and I think human force is off, and that's about as far as I can go with those documents.
But there's a fatal flaw in the Eisenhower briefing document.
What's that?
There's a reference to the El Indio Guerrero UFO crash of December of 1950. And that information came from a fellow named Robert Willingham. Willingham claimed that he had been an Air Force pilot, an Air Force fighter pilot, and he had seen the craft in the sky, and then he went down there in a private plane and saw all of that. Mm-hmm. The problem is Willingham was not an Air Force pilot. He was not an Air Force fighter pilot. He'd spent 13 months in the military. So his story is untrue. So how does that story end up in the Eisenhower briefing document if it's authentic?
Well, it's a good question. I know of the pilot, and I know that he was proven to be a fake.
I would like to take credit for that, by the way. I proved him to be a fake.
I think I believe reading that. In fact, I'm sure I did. I wish I had all those documents in front of me. I should have been more prepared to have those documents here. But I know that there's a great deal of controversy over MJ-12. But it's still my belief that something like MJ-12, if it was not MJ-12, something like it existed.
Oh, I will grant the point that if there was a crash of an alien craft at Roswell, something like MJ-12 would have been created to oversee the research and the back engineering. But I'm just saying, I think MJ-12 is completely bogus, and I outlined most of this in the updated version of Case MJ-12, which just came out a few months ago. So I have additional information on that, including an actual document with a known provenance that is top secret and reference majestic, but it has nothing to do with UFOs. It's a logistics plan to support the troops if the Soviets decide to invade Europe. So right. I can't believe that they would have two top secret programs named majestic, because the problems with keeping all of that. That
won't make any sense at all. Have to
yeah. We're running out of time here. I've got to take a break. We'll come back to this in just a few minutes. Okay. I want to just mention that there's other great programs on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at xzbn.net that deals with the paranormal and things of that nature. So if you have an interest in this sort of discussion, there's a lot of good programs at xzbn.net. Take a look at those. And, of course, my website, my blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com, and we will be back with Larry Holcombe and the Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama right after this, so please stick around.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by L.A. Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Rob McConnell here, presenting an overview for Nicholas Paul Jennings, author of a fascinating book, Amen. It presents facts revealed by Egyptologists, facts that enable us to understand why Amen is the beginning of creation of God. It provides recommendations for religious leaders of the major religions to unify their beliefs and teach the Word of God. Love one another. Amen informs people how mankind conceived God. It was the Egyptians that developed the concepts of a soul, a hereafter, and Son of God. And finally, after the worship of many gods, they conceived the belief in one universal God, the maker of all there is. For more information, visit www.futureofgodamen.com. That's www.futureofgodamen.com.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
I am joined by Larry Holcombe. His book is The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. We were talking about MJ-12 and if there had been a crash of an alien spacecraft at Roswell, we would expect some kind of oversight committee to be created. I don't think Larry and I are ever going to come to a meeting of the minds on the legitimacy of MJ-12. I think we kind of exhausted that project or that discussion. So let's talk about this Doug Locke guy that you mentioned in your book. And by the way, you were saying that you had read a book by Kehoe that had mentioned the crash in Roswell, but in going back, you couldn't find the reference. I think the book you were referring to was one by Frank Edwards called Flying Saucers, Serious Business. And he talks about the Roswell case. And about the only thing he gets right in that whole discussion is the fact that there is a town named Roswell in New Mexico, and he spells it correctly. Practically everything else he says is kind of innuendo and hearsay and that sort of thing, but it does lead us to Roswell, so it's not a complete and total washout. But you mentioned this fellow named Doug Locke in your book. Tell me about him.
Doug was a friend of mine when I was a junior and senior in high school. He was about 15 years older than I was. And I became friends with him. He came to the little town of Sanson where I lived and opened up a service station, and I became friends with him, and he let me work there occasionally. Anyway, he had told me that he had been a judo he had been in the Air Force, and he was a judo instructor, that he was sent to Japan at the direction of General Thomas Power, working for General Curtis LeMay. LeMay decided that they needed pilots to be instructed in judo. So they sent requests for 24 people to volunteer to go to Japan to be taught judo by the Codian Institute. Anyway, Doug came back. He was stationed at Fort Bliss, and he became a judo instructor.
Well, let me break in here and say that Fort Bliss is in El Paso, Texas, which is 3 hours from Roswell.
Right. And as a judo instructor, he instructed not only pilots from Fort Bliss, but pilots from surrounding bases, and that would be Roswell. He told me. Wait a minute.
Fort Bliss is an Army post.
What have I got?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Bliss is an Army post, isn't it, in El Paso?
Fort Bragg, it's no longer. No, I think it's Fort Bliss. Wait a minute. I got documents from the Air Force right here.
Okay.
Biggs Air Force Base. I'm sorry.
No, it's Biggs Army Airfield.
Well, it's right here from the Air Force. It says assignment and geographical location. He was attached to the 810th Operations Squadron at Biggs Air Force Base, Texas.
Okay. Well, I've been to Biggs. I've flown in and out of it as a military pilot, and it's Army airfield. But I guess that's really not the crucial part of the story anyway. So he's at Biggs Army Airfield, which is part of the Fort Bliss military reservation. Okay, so he's teaching judo to the pilots, and I will say that during my Air Force career, I did get instruction in knife fighting. So that's not completely outside the bounds of possibility.
Yeah.
So
you're right. Fort Bliss is there too, because I was stationed at Fort Bliss for a while.
There you go.
And Biggs Air Force Base was right across the desert from it. So anyway, we've got that straight. I had read two of Kehoe's books, Flying Saucers Are Real and Flying Saucers from Outer Space, in my high school library, and I was taken by Kehoe and his passion for the subject. Unlike George Adamski, who I thought was a nut. But in any case, I was reluctant to mention my interest in flying saucers to Doug because I thought he'd lambast me. You know, you silly kid, you believe in that stupid stuff. When I finally got up the nerve and mentioned it to him, he said, "Larry, it's all true." He said, "I instructed pilots in judo when I was in the service, in the Air Force, and they told me stories that just scared the living daylights out of them." And he says these were brave guys. These guys that flew in the Second World War in Korea, they were very brave guys. And he said, "I remember one bomber pilot telling me that he flew crash saucer debris to Wright-Patterson," which I think it was Wright Field at that time, along with some strange alien bodies. And I've often wondered if that's this bomber pilot, and he was from Roswell, was Pappy Henderson. But I don't know. It doesn't really make any difference. But the point is, Kevin, that the stories he told me, that Doug Locke told me, is an exact overlay of the story that broke in 1980, 20 years later. So what he's telling me, this simple airman, this judo instructor, is telling me the same stories that came out in 1980. It's a perfect match. And he couldn't have made it up because it hadn't broken. The only possible answer, unless you can come up with a better one, is that I'm making it up, that he never told me anything like that. But, you know, that's my word.
But we can't verify with him what he told you, can we?
We can't verify that he was a judo instructor and that he told me these stories. But because the stories are so similar to the stories that broke 20 years later, that believe me, he was not the kind of guy to believe in something like that.
Did you vet his credentials?
Yeah, I've got a letter from the Air Force. I wrote the Air Force and wanted to see if I could get documentation on him. The National Personnel Records Center sent me a letter back and said that they couldn't do it because his Air Force records were destroyed in a large warehouse fire, which I'd already heard probably would be the case. I heard this from a general officer, that this Air Force fire destroyed personnel records from 1947 through 1963, starting with H and going through Z. So that would be Locke, would be in there.
But the letter doesn't really say that, does it? It said if he was a member of the military at the time, his records may have been in the part that was destroyed. Wait
a minute. Oh, that's saying that they were. The letter says the fire destroyed the major portion of records of Army military personnel from 1912 to 1959 and records of Air Force personnel with surnames Hubbard through Z for the period 1947 through 1963.
Yes, but that does not mean his record was there. It means those records were destroyed. You see what I'm saying? It's not verification of his military service because there are no records. They were burned. The second
No. They sent me one sheet. Information releasable under the Freedom of Information Act.
Okay.
Name, Douglas T. Locke. Branch of service, serial number, U.S. Air Force, AF-14, so on.
So they did verify his existence in the Air Force.
Yes.
Okay.
And that his assignment was the 810th Operations Squadron at Biggs Air Force Base, Texas. That came from
the center in St. Louis then.
That's right. National Archives and Records Administration.
Well, the reason I press on that point, and it gets back to Willingham, is that Willingham used the same excuse. Well, my records were burned in the Great Fire, but it turns out that there's a Air Reserve Center in Denver, Colorado that has an awful lot of the Air Force records, and I was able to get records from there and learn a great deal about Willingham. So that was why I kind of pressed that point, simply to make sure that we'd gotten actual physical documentation to vet his service.
Right.
So okay, that's good. So he talked to people who flew wreckage from Roswell to Wright Field.
Right. But he also talked to pilots that were told to engage these objects. And that scared them because the objects were so far superior. I mean, they'd fly circles around them and then literally take off at fantastic speeds. Of course, it wasn't even only the pilots that were seeing these things. There were a number of scientists in New Mexico that saw them. You remember
Charles Moore.
Yeah, Dr. Charles Moore. You must be a mind reader.
He's not a doc. He was not a doctor. He got an honorary degree just as he retired. We're going to have to take a break here.
Okay.
The book is Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. The website is Larry Holcombe, and that's an E at the end of Holcombe.com to get some additional information. My blog is www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. And the book we kind of talked about is Case MJ12, which came out a few months ago. It's an updated version of the book that I had done a decade and a half ago. I think when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about these sorts of things, and I'm going to find out about Jimmy Carter's UFO sighting from Larry Holcombe. We will be back right after this, so stick around.
They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Ellie Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
Christopher Fulton is a survivor of the national security state. All he wanted to do was preserve history when he acquired a Cartier watch from the estate of President Kennedy's personal secretary. But that simple act set off a terrible chain reaction. He was pursued by the U.S. Justice Department and the FBI, thrust into the middle of the U.S. government's Assassination Records Review Board, even monitored and pursued by the Russian government. All because that Cartier watch was the missing link of evidence, a timepiece worn by JFK that fateful day in Dallas, a link resulting in Christopher being incarcerated and attacked for 9 years because he opened a hidden chapter in history. The intriguing journey outlined fully in Christopher Fulton's memoir, The Inheritance, is available now through TrineDay.com or Amazon.com. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination by Christopher and Michelle Fulton is a must-read, an incredible tale of how easily our own government can overrule justice. The Inheritance, Poisoned Fruit of JFK's Assassination.
I am joined by Larry Holcombe, The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama is his book. His website is larryholcombe.com. We were talking about Doug Locke and his experiences when we went away, and I think we pretty well ironed out that the fact he was an member of the Air Force, and the documentation supports that. And the reason I kind of press that is I've had a number of people give me documents about their military service, and when I've gone to a disinterested source such as St. Louis and the Air Reserve Center in Denver, Colorado, I find out that the documents they gave me have been altered. So I always like to get them from a independent source in that way. And one thing I wanted to get into before we close things out today is, of course, you talk about the sightings of the presidents, and I wondered what you thought about Jimmy Carter's UFO sighting.
It's very interesting. He was, I think, at a Lions Club. He was president of, might have been, I don't know, he was the director or something of the state. And he was
the governor.
Well, he wasn't the governor at that time. I think he was, I don't think he was the governor at that. I think that was before he was the governor.
I thought he was the governor at the time it happened, but irrelevant point.
He was at a Lions Club meeting because he was the district chairman, and they were standing outside at night, outside of a restaurant where they're going to have the meeting, and he saw this object. They all saw it. That was quite large. I think he said it was about the size of a full moon. And if I recall correctly, he said it changed colors, and it was moving. But I can't recall exactly whether he said it changed from an orange to a bluish or something, and the object was moving. He ended up filing a UFO sighting report on it, which is in the public domain now. So he had a sighting, but of course, like other presidents who've talked about UFOs, when they get into office, you don't hear a peep out of them, and that was the case with Carter.
Other presidents seeing UFOs?
Yeah, Ronald Reagan saw UFOs twice. He was on a private jet, and they say he saw one and had the pilot chase the thing.
Well, wait. Let me rephrase my question. Any other presidents see flying saucers? See the difference?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one would assume. I don't think. No, Reagan probably referred to it as UFO because UFO was the common term used then. Like you said earlier, I like the term flying saucer, but this was obviously something very unusual. And the thing, when they started chasing it, the thing just streaked away at some incredible speed. Could it have been something prosaic at that time? It's very possible. It could have been something experimental. But he also saw what appeared to be a alien craft on the ground on a road in front of him, and he was going to a party at I forget whose house it was. May have been Shirley MacLaine, Lucille Ball, I think it was. And he told them about this object that was sitting on the ground and sort of blocking their way in the road. And he said that's why he was late. He and Nancy both saw it. I don't think Reagan would go to a party, and I forget who else was there. Steve Allen, I believe. And Steve Allen talked to him at length about it. He was apparently very interested in it. That's Reagan's story in a short capsule.
Are these tales related in your book?
Yes.
So and there'd be more information about them?
Yeah, much more. And then you had Jerry Ford, who wrote a letter to Mendel Rivers when he was in the House of Representatives, and said that trying to get congressional hearing on UFOs because of all of his constituents in Michigan were hammering him about these sightings that they were having in Michigan. You remember the Michigan flap in like 1966 or something in that time frame. I don't know.
It was 1966.
Yeah.
It was in the Ann Arbor, Dexter, Michigan area.
Yes.
And it's where J. Allen Hynek said it was based on swamp gas.
Right. But the interesting thing there is that Jerry Ford never spoke about it in office. I did find in the Ford Library letters from Hynek to Donald Rumsfeld, stating that according to your request, Don, according to your request, I'm sending some new data that we have gotten. This is when he was with Center for UFO, or heading up the Center for UFO Studies, and he enclosed some documents to Rumsfeld and a letter back from Rumsfeld thanking Hynek for the information, and if they have found anything else new, please, if you would, pass it on to him. Now, was this Rumsfeld's own interest, or was it the interest of his boss, Jerry Ford? I don't know. In any case, it's certainly very interesting.
But that was after Project Blue Book, and Hynek had, of course, was no longer the consultant to Blue Book because it didn't exist. So
right.
How did the Condon Committee affect the presidential views of UFOs quickly, because we're running short on time?
I think it was a total whitewash. Condon didn't believe in them, thought it was pure fancy, folly. He had his mind made up before he even spent 2 years with his people researching it. And his report that he wrote, the Condon report on the Colorado project, was vastly different from the report that the scientists working for him made. I think he wrote 2 reports, 2 sections, and then the scientists wrote 2 sections, and they were vastly different. And it's at the same time, up the road in Colorado Springs, at the Air Force Academy physics class was teaching its students that there may be as many as 4 different races visiting Earth. And back in Denver, the University of Denver was collecting $500,000 from the Air Force.
It's the University of Colorado in Boulder.
University of Colorado, okay.
Well, I didn't want to give the University of Denver a bad name.
I mean,
trying to protect the University of Denver.
I'm getting old. Sometimes these facts escape me.
That's what the internet is for.
Yes.
To help you out. Well,
and it does all the time.
There was clearly a dichotomy between or amongst the various people in the Air Force about what was going on and what is accurate and what is not accurate. So the fact that the Condon Committee, which was a civilian organization, was saying one thing and the Air Force had a textbook out saying something else is two different matters. But it's a point that they really hadn't coordinated the information or the intelligence. Larry, we're going to have to let you go. We're running out of time once again.
Well, I enjoyed it.
The book is The Presidents and UFOs, A Secret History from FDR to Obama. The website is larryholcombe.com for additional information. And as I say, take a look at www.kevinrandle.blogspot.com. Larry, I enjoyed the conversation, and we'll have you back sometime. Okay. Things you need to know before we go. www.iuforrc.com is the new reporting center, the International UFO Reporting Research Center. I'll be working as the lead investigator on that, looking into UFO sightings. So there you go. If you're interested in the paranormal, and there's a lot of different areas of the paranormal, you can take a look at it at xzbn.net. I am fans of some of the programs there as well, and listen to them when I get a chance. And the other thing you all should know is that next week I will be joined by Mark O'Connell in what I think of as season 2. It'll be show number 3. We'll be talking about J. Allen Hynek. Mark O'Connell wrote the book on J. Allen Hynek. He wrote a biography of J. Allen Hynek. And this was kind of inspired by the Project Blue Book program that aired recently on the History Channel. And I wanted to get his take on what he thought about how they presented Hynek and the things that Hynek did. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to see how far off the rails they might have gone, and learn a little bit more about J. Allen Hynek. When I was doing some research into the Michigan sightings, I discovered that the swab gas explanation that Hynek gave, which I thought was kind of off the cuff, turned out to be something that he truly believed at the time he said it. He was more behind it than I would have thought. So we'll take a look at that and learn some things about J. Allen Hynek and the Center for UFO Studies and what his UFO research taught him. My books that you should be looking for is Roswell in the 21st Century, of course, Encounter in the Desert, which is the Lonnie Zamora sighting in depth, and Case MJ12, which has relevance to today's program. I will be back in 168 hours? I forget now. 167 hours with Mark O'Connell. We'll be talking UFO. So thanks for listening.
If you are looking for a safe, zero-calorie natural option to the harmful artificial sweeteners on the market today, Just Like Sugar is what you're looking for. Just Like Sugar is a wonderful natural alternative for those health-conscious people who choose a calorie-restricted diet with a great, pure, sweet flavor that tastes just like sugar. Just Like Sugar is a great natural option for people suffering from diabetes and may be useful in restricted diet programs where standard sugars are not allowed and does not cause a laxative effect of some other sweeteners. Just Like Sugar comprises a perfect blend of chicory root fiber, natural calcium, natural vitamin C, and Just Like Sugar's sweetness comes from the natural flavors from the peel of the orange. Just Like Sugar is a natural alternative to harmful artificial sweeteners and will change the way that you believe all natural sweetener products taste. Just Like Sugar is available at your local Whole Foods markets, Wild Oats markets, Henry's, Sun Harvest, and many other fine natural food stores in the U.S., Canada, and worldwide. They are here, and they've been here for thousands of years, making their presence known in the shadows. They might be seen by a lonely motorist on a deserted road late at night, or by a frightened and confused husband in the bedroom he is sharing with his wife. But who are they? What do they want? Why are they here? Perhaps most concerning, has the government been aware of their presence all along? The new book by Eli Marzulli, UFO Disclosure, the 70-year cover-up exposed, delves into the world of UFOs. Can full disclosure be soon? Order now and receive a free hour and 37-minute DVD on the UFO phenomenon. UFOs are real. Get both the book and the DVD, a $40 value, for only $19.99. To order your book and DVD today, go to lamarzulli.net. That's LAMARZULLI.net.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.